श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः. In the last few sessions, we had deliberately discussed on the basis of the book the modern developments in genetics and whether those arguments, the new arguments that are questions are raised, whether they can be answered by Vedas. And we found that it can be. We'll quickly have a recapitulation of what we said and conclude on what was or look at the conclusion of our discussions in that. Now, we had discussed these issues, Jiva being distinctly different from the body. The whole problem, I mean, if I say in a if I summarize this whole discussion, it amounts to this, that science goes by looking at the inert matter, the body, whereas the Vedas are looking into the aspect of intelligence, the supreme intelligence, without which there cannot be evolution in the objects or the body or the matter, inert matter that science talks about. So, the whatever developments are taking place in science or in genetics, they still do not take into consideration this question of intelligence. So, ultimately, it is boiling down to chemical reactions or electrical reactions or the atoms coming together on their own. Then they are inert. How can they come together and form the Jiva? So, the Jiva is very different from the body. Body is inert matter. So this is the main point, but taking into account many questions that are now raised, this was discussed. So what all were taken, we will just point out. So first it was shown that the Jiva is distinctly different from the body. Then the question of what is life? Life cannot be simply just, digestion, procreation and all that. Because without any activities also the Jiva exists, and if the activities are there, the Jiva may not even exist. So there is no connection between the activity and Jiva. And then we found the modern developments which talk about amnesia, phantom pain, etc. In fact, reinforce the argument of rebirth, because we understand from this question about this phantom pain, etc., that the pain is more mental, because even after some part of the body is amputated, the patients are found to feel itching sensation or sensation of pain in the body, part of the body which doesn't at all exist there. So what is happening? That means in the mind, that impression, that the identification of the oneself with that body is the one which is leading one to feel that pain, even if which is a phantom pain, because that particular part of the body doesn't exist. And it was shown that this is the argument given when one does rituals for the deceased parents, or what you call pitra, the males. So this is the argument behind that we believe that the Jiva still exists, that it has exited the body. It is not the body which exists and then the Jiva exists. It is because the Jiva exists that the body also decays. That is what we find, because when the Jiva has exited, still the body is there and it is decomposing. That is why we bury or burn the dead body. Then the question was taken up about whether mind is a product of brain, and it was decided no, it cannot be the product of the brain. Brain is inert matter, but mind is inside that, which is actually act by intelligence. Then which precedes which? The mind precedes the body, or the body precedes the mind? It was shown that it is mind which has to precede the body, and not the body which precedes the mind. The question of life under refrigerator, some worms can be kept inside the refrigerator, then they look almost dead. But when they are given the warmth of the sun and all, they come to life, which again shows that so long as the jiva is inside in whatever form, latent form, uh, explicitly seen form, the body is there. So this again reinforces the argument that jiva is different from the body. We also discussed about life cell. What is a cell? That cell, each cell in the body is not a separate uh, being, jiva, because it's all the collection of the cells together and their interconnections which helps the body to come into existence, into which the jiva occupies. And we had given some of the parable, the allegory that is given in the Upanishads to also justify that. And then there was the question about instinct, because to say, we get into infinite regress if we talk about instinct. Instinct is what which is done without practice, and then what is practice? That you go roundabout and discuss that. So that was also discussed. Now in this session, we're going to discuss about the beginninglessness of the birds. Let's see the question that is raised by the opponent. They say, how can you say there are infinite births? We know that creation itself took place a finite time ago. How is it possible to have infinite births in a finite time? You have already told that the Shastra also says that the creation started from Akasha and so on, and later on withdraws at the time of Pralaya, that is dissolution. Well, the answer is that that is true. There was a beginning for this creation, and there will also be an end to it. But the Shastra also says that there have been already innumerable creations like this one earlier, and so also innumerable creations will be there in future too. In each creation, the jivas that are born had already spent infinite lives in the previous infinite creations. Very meaning of the word infinity is, you know, it cannot be decreased or increased. So then the opponent raises the question, if there is a repetition of creation in this way, creations in this way, does it mean that the discussion we are having now has taken place in the previous creations also, and that it would be taking place in the ensuing creations also? If so, this discussion is really pointless. The answer to it is it's not so. It is certainly true that God creates the world starting from Akasha, then Vayu comes, from Vayu comes Agni or the fire, and from fire comes the water, Jala, and from water comes the Prithvi or earth. And also it is true that this from the in this order the bodies of the jivas are created, which have already existed in previous creation. Human beings are also born in this process. After being born, it is their responsibility to shape their future. See, God creates plants, cereals for our sake, but does not cook food for us. We have to cook the food. God has created wood and stones for our sake, but does not build houses for us. Cooking food, building houses are our jobs and not God's jobs. On the same lines, going forward or backward is our choice. Man may lead a pious life and go to higher levels. In that case, this discussion need not be repeated. Else, man may lead senselessly sensuous and impious life and degenerate to lower levels where man will not even have the ability to discuss. Born as an insect or an animal. In other words, working out the details of our lives is our responsibility. We can go forward or backward. God's function is only to repeat the event of creation and going on providing opportunities to the jiva to evolve. Now, the opponent then raises the question, is it not possible that this universe has been existing since infinite past and may also continue like this till infinite future? What is the basis of for the repetition of creation of a finite of a finite time? The reason is as the answer given is that the reason is as simple as building a house, demolishing it. When it is dilapidated, you rebuild it later. The purpose of creation, as we have seen already, is to satisfy the needs of the jivas. Jivas function only on the basis of the light and warmth of the sun. These have these things have to come to an end. That means there will be dissolution when even the Surya, Chandra, that is the sun, moon, all get dissolved because they are finite. Then the divas cannot survive. But you see, their karmas are there, those impressions are there, which remains to be worked out. So, perforce, this has to be experienced by them. That requires another creation. Creations repeat for that reason. The opponent asks, is there any scientific basis also for this statement? The answer is perhaps. There are some people researching in this direction, but at least this much has already been observed that new stars are taking birth and old stars are dying out. So there is no logical inconsistency in the repetition of creation. Now, again, the opponent says, you have told that there is no beginning for births. Is there an end at least? Well, there is an end. This will be discussed later when we come to that issue. But here, then the opponent's question is, if there is an end, all the jivas have to terminate, even though it may be after a very long time. You have also told that the creation is only to serve the needs of the jivas. Therefore, with the termination of the jivas, creations will also have to terminate. The answer is no. Creations will not terminate because, according to the Shastra, the number of jivas is actually infinite. Therefore, when each jiva in due course may become free from birth and death, there will be jivas for whose sake the creations would have to again repeat. In this context, Jain mathematicians of our country have worked out various features of infinity. What is infinity? It's actually a mathematical question, uh, but scientifically it can be shown. Now, coming to the issue of environmental genes, the opponent asks, it has been told that children's abilities are a result of efforts done in their previous births. Why can't we say that it is due to the environment where the offspring grows? For example, if a cat is brought up in darkness, it will lose its ability for sight, and a monkey can perform human acts by training. We also see that urban people are more intelligent than the rural people. Modern people are more intelligent than our ancestors. Does it not show that environment is responsible for such talents? Now, the answer again given from science itself is that a Nobel Prize winner by name Roger Sperry has researched in great detail about the roles of environment and genes in people's activities. He says very clearly that learning does not generate anything new in the brain, nor non learning destroys anything. In his own words, learning and experience do not involve the addition or subtraction of any actual fibers or fiber connections, but involve only physiological changes that affect conductance or resistance to impulse transmission, all within the existing ontogenetically determined networks. So you can see the reference in the book about this Roger Ferry. Not learning may cause a sort of atrophy in that part of the brain, and learning may cause a smoother flow of energy therein. That's all. Next, when you say that urban people are more intelligent than the rural people, it is not a correct statement. Urban people may have more information, but their knowledge may be very superficial. Rural people may have less information, but their knowledge may be deeper. Therefore, it is not correct to claim one superiority over the other. Similar, is the situation in us in regard to our ancestors. Therefore, we can only say that environment only provides a suitable opportunity for the unfolding of the inherent ability. So the ability is inherent. It is only providing, the environment is only providing a suitable opportunity for all. Then the opponent raises the question, in that case, can we say that differences in persons are solely due to their biochemical origins, namely sperms? But we see that there are a lot of differences even in the children born in the same parents. So how can you say that it is because of the difference in the sperm? Because the same parents, their children are very different. Then the opponent say that must be due to the fact that the biochemical structure of the sperm itself is changing from time to time. The difference in them have their origins in this. The answer is, in that case, how can one explain the differences found in twins? Though they have been conceived simultaneously, one may have good health, another may not. One may be intelligent, another may not be. One may be a boy, and the other may be a girl. Now, the opponent says it has already been said that the sperm changes from time to time. In the case of twins, they originate from different parts of the sperm, which have different properties. That is the reason for the difference between twins. But the answer given by the Astika or the Vaidika is, in that case, what about the difference seen in Siamese twins who originate from the same parts of the sperms? There were two Siamese twins, sisters, I believe, in Bangalore 6 decades ago. We do not have any information about their personalities. But two such sisters in Massachusetts of America by name Mary and Margaret were under continuous examination of the doctors. They were giving demonstrations in circuses in Europe and America. They lived for 54 long years. They were born together, died together. But Margaret suffered from intestinal cancer and died in January 1967. And 2 hours later, Mary also died. Could there be more commonness in the environment? They lived simultaneously in the same womb, took the same food, had the same blood, each saw and heard the same as the other, both experienced the same heat or cold simultaneously. This way, there was absolutely no difference in the environment. Also, they originated from the same sperm. Notwithstanding all these identities, their features were very different. Margaret had tendencies to amass wealth. Mary was a spendthrift. Margaret suffered the pain of intestinal cancer, but not Mary. What is the origin of these differences? Now, again, the opponent says even in the same part of the sperm, there will be differences in the biochemical structure at its different sites, and this is one of the reasons for the differences in the Siamese twins. Modern genetics attributes these differences to what is called extra chromosomal inheritance. The Astika or the Vaidika replies, Sir, you trace the origin of differences first to the environment, then to the sperm, then to the different parts of the sperm, then to the different sites of the same part, and so on. These answers may perhaps be correct if the question is how. But our question is not how, but why. See, that is where the difference between modern science of science and the Vedas. We are interested in the question of why. Science is only at best able to explain how, that also not always fully. What does science say in this regard about why this happens? And that is why now we will take up in the next session the transfer of karma as it is explained in the Vedas. In our group, this question had been raised by some people, and we had said when that occasion comes in our course of the study, we will be in detail discussing this. So, in the next session, we will discuss about the transfer of karma. That is, when one jiva moves from one body to another body, first of all, how this movement takes place and how the karma is transferred from this body which he lives and to the body which he takes up. That will be the next question that we discuss in the next session. So we conclude our session here today. कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. हरि ओम तत्सत्.